They are superheroes without capes. And after my conversation with all three of them, an overarching theme started to present itself. And I think that a lot of people, specifically women in this audience, will know something about that. When it comes to being a woman, there's more than just our careers. There is oftentimes motherhood, there's family, there's our own lives. There is so many things that we have to balance and make it look effortless. Not only that, as Black women, we have to master the art of the pivot with a capital P. We can't always, rely on the status quo or the corporate job, especially now when 300,000 Black women found themselves out of work because of the current administration. How many women found themselves having to figure out what is plan B and C when they don't even working on plan A? And I really want to start there because I think that that's really, really important. And I want to start with you, Dr. J. I want to start with you, first of all, your thoughts about that, and your thoughts about the pivot with a capital P, and how somebody can prepare for the worst thing to happen to them.
So I want to start with saying that mindset is everything. So for those who don't know, I'm a neuropsychologist who focus on mental and financial health, but I started corporate and became an entrepreneur. And the way I did that pivot was, for me, before I left corporate, I saved a certain amount of money first. And that was very important to me because I knew I didn't want to completely have no savings and go from zero. And I think sometimes some of us wait till the emergency and the bad things happen, and then we just like, oh, you know what, I should have been saving, or I should have been investing and diversifying my portfolio. But I think the most important part is we should all be focusing on diversifying multiple streams of income, right? So if you have a 9 to 5, sometimes we're tired, but it is so important if you're tired and you can't create a second job from 6 to 10, that you at minimum invest. Because we hear it all the time, you can't save your way to, be wealthy, but you can invest yourself to be wealthy, right? And, there is this concept that, you can save yourself to that. But in my opinion, with inflation, compound interest, life, people losing their jobs, we just saw a government shutdown where generations of people were not able to go to work. And I knew one particular family where all 3 generations were being impacted, and they were like, couldn't pay their mortgage, so this continued, and it was hitting them so hard. Why? Because they didn't have stocks, they didn't have crypto, they didn't have real estate. They had almost little to nothing to pull from. And I was thinking the worst thing to do. So in the art of the pivot, making sure that you're not in a position where you're not overwhelmed, I think it's so important that we diversify our income and diversify as well our portfolios before the bubble comes.
I also want to address something as well. We use these, terms like diversifying portfolios, and we have to be realistic. The vast majority of people don't have a portfolio. We have to be realistic about what the average person is dealing with, and also what knowledge they're dealing with or lack thereof. I like to say, you don't know what you don't know until you know it, kind of thing. And being a neuropsychologist, you work on the mindset. As a matter of fact, you're developing a curriculum for children to introduce them to the concept of investing in banking early, so that that core, that sponge that is their young minds absorbs that information early and it normalizes that kind of behavior. For people like us, the average adult who doesn't have that knowledge, what is an easy first step? Or what is the easy first step? And also, Olivia, you can absolutely jump in here because you come from the venture capitalist world. You run Serena Ventures. This is your world. You have been on both sides of the founder and the investor, mark the plan. So please jump in after Dr. J speaks.
So first thing I'd like to say, we have a company in all called Kids Who Think. It's gone into 489 schools around the United States teaching financial literacy, and the curriculum is always growing and evolving. And rather you're a 5 or 6-year-old child or an 80-year-old person, the most important thing is the question I have to ask you. Raise your hand if you think you could buy a stock. for as low as $5. Even a portion of a stock or crypto, raise your hand if you know that you can purchase, even if it's crypto, Bitcoin or Ethereum, or a portion of an Apple stock for as low as $5, raise your hand. I love that so many of you raise your hands. For those of you who have not raised your hands, I want you to understand that sometimes the mindset is just knowing that it's not as expensive as you think it is, right? Getting an account and opening an account with a brokerage account, which is different than your bank account, and being able to, even if it's a partial, so maybe you might not be able to buy a full share of stock, compound interest, right? Little by little, every week, put $5 towards it. Instead of buying this $20 pizza pie, maybe finding a stock that you like that is $20 per share and investing in it. If you can afford, who here has one pair of cakes that's above $200? Raise your hand. Okay, we saw a few people raise their hands. Anyone here ever bought a pair of shoes or sneakers above $200? Raise your hands. I know more hands needs to be up. You guys are lying over that. I know a lot of these women up in here got the Gucci's and the Louis. But if you can afford that, sometimes a share of the actual company that gives you equity in the company, which means ownership in the actual company, is less expensive than the shoes you're wearing, the jacket you're wearing, or the clothing, or the list continues, the car that you purchase. So you should, if you're gonna buy the clothing, maybe even buy shares of the company that you like to invest in.
Just to piggyback a little bit off of that, if let's say you feel like you don't have enough money to invest, and you can get a group of your friends and all of you guys put up a certain amount, you guys can create a special purpose vehicle or it's called an SPV. That's how a lot of people invest who aren't accredited investors as well.
So I want to piggyback off of what you're saying, and I want to bring you into the conversation, Jalissa, because you've done something with SaltXO, the intimate wellness company that makes a lot of sense to people. It's created on social media. You created a company in which you're not a slave to the algorithm, which I find very, very unique. So I want to ask you about that. But another theme that the ladies and I were talking about was sisterhood. And redefining what sisterhood looks like after a certain age, when priorities start to align in very different ways. And what that looks like is what Olivia just mentioned. Trying to pull together the resources, figuring out who holds the strength in one area and pooling resources to kind of create your own fund, so to speak. And that works in so many different capacities. That can work in real estate, that can work in artwork, that can work in all of the aspects of portfolio diversification.
It even works in, I recently started investing in Broadway shows, and that's how I got into it, because I'm like, well, you have to buy a certain amount of points in order to get in, but each point is sold at maybe like 50K. I don't want to do that big of an investment, so you find a couple of other people who can equate the 50,000, and now you guys can get your points, and you just opened up access to Broadway investing to people who didn't know about it and your group of friends.
So, moving on to Jalissa, like I said, we started an intimate wellness company with $67 and brought that to 8 figures. There's a lot of steps in between, and that's the thing that we see on social media. We see a lot of trend panic. We're seeing it right now with AI. Everybody's, oh my God, AI is going to replace all these jobs, AI is going to replace us, et cetera, et cetera. So everybody is panicking, trying to figure out what to do. They're buying all these courses. People are getting rich off of this situation, but I mean, how many people have actually used the course that they bought? I bought 3 and have used 0. I will be completely honest about that. So with social media, you start to see these things. With UGC, everybody's got to be a user-generated content creator. I'm just like, I'd love to do that. Do I know how to hold the camera or edit or whatever? No, I don't. So will I get to create UGC? I don't necessarily know. So creating a brand for $67 to 8 figures, this is a lot of steps along the way. There's a lot of that is not glamorous. Is there anything that you feel comfortable sharing about the infancy of that, and maybe a part of that story in which you thought that it was not going to work, that it was a complete failure and you're going to walk away from it?
Yeah, so I think that my greatest, well, first of all, let's just set the tone in here. When I say Saul, I need y'all to say EXO because it's a little too dim. When I say Saul EXO, y'all gonna call it back, right? Saul EXO. Saul EXO. And that's really important, especially when you're first starting out. The thing that you think about is, okay, well, maybe I should make a financial investment. I made an investment into people, my primary. So my sister right now, she's still with me, and she has the greatest responsibility because I entrusted her very early. So when I'm thinking about building a team, building people, building businesses, $67, it sounds small, but that was a small seed. And if you know anything about having faith, all it takes is a mustard seed. So I just use that as the catalyst to building my brand. And then when I built my brand and I built my people, I was able to grow with it. So my sister, she has been by my side, roles, my chief of staff right now, I empower them in their roles. And we're able to grow and constantly succeed. But I think a lot of times people think that you have to have all the money in the beginning. That's not how it works, especially when you're trying to start something from the ground up. We don't always have investor money or the assets or the mentality to know how to do something like that. So sometimes it takes for us to use what we have to be able to grow.
Olivia, I want to bounce the conversation back to you as a chief of staff. You see a lot of how the decisions get made when people are looking for investment. You've been on both sides of the coin. What is something that you can tell people here who may have a company and they're going to start looking for investments? What are some of the things that you can tell them that they might find horrifying, that they might find interesting? What is something that you can tell them that is like the biggest misstep that people make consistently because of a mindset issue or a mindset block or a mindset kind of assumption?
Yeah, so I definitely think, to your point, team is a big portion of that. If you think about investing in terms of sports, right? If you're going to go and you're going to play against an all-star team, you need to have an all-star team backing you. So that means a CTO, and it doesn't have to be people who are in these positions full-time. You could have a fractional CTO. You could honestly have a friend who's a CTO and kind of put them on as an advisor too. So that's a lot of the part of what we want to see as investors is that you kind of know how to show up and do your part. Because ultimately, as an investor, we raise money the same way you guys raise money, right? The same way a founder raises money. We just raise it in like hundreds of millions of dollars, and then we have to give back those investors everything they put in times 5. So thinking from the top down, if my job is to give you your money back times 5, as a founder, how can you position yourself to seem like less of a risk? Like we want to know that it's a deep risk marketplace, the industry that you're investing in or the industry that your company is in. Consider whether or not your company is actually venture backable as well, because sometimes it's not. Sometimes you might be able to get funds another way, right? But also, I would encourage you guys to do research on the funds you're pitching to make sure that they invest in your brand. If there is a company that only invests in leather, and I've got a skincare company, I'm not going to go to them, obviously. So make sure you know who your target is, make sure you've got a good, solid team. And again, relating it to basketball again, if you come to play with All-Stars, you're going to come with your sneakers, your knee pads, your headbands, your water bottle. Come suited and booted and ready to go, and showing us that you know what to do with the capital once you get it, and you have a clear plan on where it's going to go.
So let me ask you guys something. I feel like there's a collective consciousness here as to why people come to Invest Fest. Would I be mistaken in thinking that there's a common goal here, right? Okay. There's a mindset, would you say? And sometimes, we're at different levels of what that mindset is. The reason why I ask this question is because through my discussion with these ladies, this theme of mindset comes up. And Dr. J, being a neuropsychologist, she studies mindset. So when it comes to the mindset with your clinical training, when it comes to the mindset of people who want to invest, they want to get into business, they want to find success. What is the behavior that never aligns with, the clinical understanding of what people believe investing to be?
I would say that one of the first things I noticed, there are a lot of people who don't believe they deserve the wealth or that they've been And if your mindset is that, it is going to be so much harder for you to actually succeed, in my personal opinion. I'm almost guaranteed that when she started with $67, in her mind she was like, I don't see a table that looks like the one I want to build, I'm going to build it. Am I right?
Absolutely.
And so that mindset of just knowing, even if the table does not exist, I will build it. If it does exist and there isn't a spot for me there, I will make one. If I can't make one, but I can work my way to be on that table, I will do the work to get to that spot. But if you're going to be lazy, if you don't want to do the work, if you just want things handed to you, because we do have this new generation, I feel like, the popcorn people who just want to press one and see everything just be ready in 30 seconds. That is not naturally the actual reality of most successful people that I know. There is a lot of grit, a lot of tenacity, a lot of work that goes into it. Now, are there different ways to make money when maybe not to do as much work? Yes. But then you need to be able to be a creative who created the most ultimate idea, and you're able to hire the people on the team to help you execute that idea. And maybe you don't have the money to do so, but if you have the mindset and the knowledge and the know-how, maybe you have a skill that you can barter in order to be able to create what you want to create. But first, you have to believe that you can create it. Second, you have to believe that you deserve a spot at the table, or that you're willing to do the work to create your own table. And then third, you have to actually start to put the steps towards it. It's not about the million steps in one day. It's about that one step consistently every day to get you closer to your goals. Because the next thing I want you to remember mindset-wise is that a lot of successful people did not become successful overnight. They actually worked consistently towards those goals. And what you're seeing at the end with Salt X Earth and the Serena Ventures of the world are women and people who actually consistently work towards the big goal.
I like what you just said there because what it, yeah, please. I like what you said there because another concept that we discussed amongst the three of us was failing forward. There's so much shame rooted in failure when in actuality, I feel like the greatest moments of my life and my greatest successes are born from tragedies, where they're born from really, really massive missteps and judgments. And I think that it's valuable by way of storytelling if you all would be willing to share a moment in your lives in which it's the setback before the setback kind of situation, failing forward when it actually presented the greatest situation for yourself. So, Olivia, can I start with you? You're the go to Elizabeth, and then we go to Dr. J, please.
So my failing forward moment was when I started a skincare company, and I put a deck together. I got these chemists on internships because I couldn't really afford to hire anybody at that point. So, and that's another tip for founders. If you can't find anybody, internships, that's still a thing. You can put an ad out on LinkedIn and say exactly what it's for and tell them exactly when they're not getting paid, and people will still work with you. So I started a skincare company, and I created a deck, and I pitched it to a couple different funds, and then I pitched it to Serena Ventures, and she ended up not giving me the funds, but she was like, I really, really like what you're doing, I love your work ethic, would you consider coming into venture capital? And I thought to myself, this is like one of those pivotal moments, right, where you have to decide, do I go work for someone else, or do I continue to do the thing that I love and the thing that I'm passionate about? And I mean, when Serena asks you to do something, you're like, whatever train you're driving, I'm getting on it.
Yep.
So it wasn't an easy decision for me, but it was one of the best decisions I've ever made, because now I have a front row seat to what fundraising is like. I have a front row seat to the venture capital world, and honestly seeing how some of the founders have kind of changed from their initial investment thesis to, 2 or 3 years later, I'm so happy to be where I am right now. And I'm like, I never would have thought I would be doing this 5 years ago. So, so that was fun.
I like to shift my mindset a little bit about failure and what that means. For me, that's just an opportunity to learn, because a lot of times we get really afraid of failure, and so you try to make all the right decisions with without having any real help. So from the beginning, I was comfortable with taking a loss and learning and understanding that it was always a bigger lesson. So for me, my favorite moment was in 2019. I had just had my baby, and I was making soap out of my apartment. Actually, my house was renting house, and we were making soap in the garage, and living room. I mean, I had a full warehouse. I was so proud of it, and we had thousands of orders. We had shipped them within 3 to 4 business days. I was so proud of the timeline because that was something that was really difficult to accomplish in the beginning. And we shipped out everything to the Postal Service. At that time, it was a hurricane, and they lost every single package. Every single package, they lost it. And when that happened, it was devastating financially for me because I'm a bootstrap business. I only had my business for almost, it wasn't even 2 years yet. So I had to take all the money out of the reserves, out of the Solid Soap bank account. I had to reship all those orders because I wasn't going to make an excuse to the customers because I understood I was building a brand. And when you're building a brand, how you start and do anything is how you do everything. So I reestablished, I made more products, I shipped them out, and they never knew about it until years later when I told the story. They were like, wait, you lost all those packages? Because it wasn't for them to know, and I understood that I was building a brand I wanted to trust. And also, because we have intimate washing and intimate moments, that's something that people feel like they need to use all the time. So I didn't want to deprive them of it, I just wanted to be able to make a decision, make it quickly, and make sure that they didn't feel the impact of it. But that was a really devastating moment for me. And one lesson I took from that is when you're building a business in the beginning, do not use your money to buy new cars and put on your best dress outfit. Like, be okay with being in the mud, being in the thick of it. Because it's not about enlisting in the beginning. You are building an empire. And even if you believe that it's something small, even if you believe, oh, we may not take that mindset out of your, take it away. It's all lies. Lies. You are building something great. So make sure that you are saving. And if you do not have the resources to hire someone, grab a friend. If your friends are your friends, they will do it because they love you enough to work and see you grow. So do it regardless. And that was my favorite moment.
That's excellent advice, and it is very true. You would be surprised who you find in your life that just believes in your vision and believes in your dream and wants to be there in its infancy to see it grow, because that does something for them as well. So that sounded horrific, but I'm glad that you had the stick-to-itiveness to keep on going. Dr. J, do you have a story?
I think for me it was more, so I have ADHD and OCD. I realized this last year that most of my very high performative friends all have ADHD with me. And so, so shout out to anyone with OCD, ADHD, and all the things, right? So sometimes I'm working on one project, I'm doing 2, 3, 4 projects together all at once, because that's just how my brain is more productive. And so I'm not just in one lane, and in the middle of growing my brand and what I was doing, it's really hard to micromanage 4 different businesses, or 3 different businesses, or 2 different businesses. But in my failing forward, there was a point where I remember just hearing, you need to release domains, and you need to hire the team to do the work, and sit back. And even if they don't do it the way you think it's supposed to be done, and the process that you think it should be done, you need to learn to just let them do that process as long as the end result is the right result. And that was a very hard process for me because I was trying to just like at points I was taking mistakes and like, I'm gonna just do everything by myself, I can do it all by myself, and I started burning out and I was exhausted. So while I was creating these companies that were doing very well, I was tired and I could not enjoy it at all. I was exhausted, I was taking no sleep, and I just kept thinking, I'm gonna put the 100-hour work weeks that I put into other corporate companies into my own brand and my own self and see what happens. So at one point, when I started seeing the success, it became addictive, and then I just kept going, and then I forgot about the sleep component. Because I'm gonna tell you this, one of the most important things you can do as an entrepreneur is make sure you rest your sleep. In fact, as a human being, is make sure you rest and sleep. So I hope you guys are all resting and sleeping. So my failing forward was hiring people trial and error, and starting to just making sure that even if it's something simple like hiring a person to teach me how to hire, making sure I was doing that, because in the beginning I was literally exhausting myself and doing too much because I was micromanaging. And I know there's probably lots of beginners and business people who were like, this person's not gonna label it, they're gonna do it all crooked, blah blah blah. I remember even down to kids, and I remember seeing the girl put the labels on the envelope, but I was like, why is she making it all crooked like that? I was like, you know what, I'll just label it myself. And I'm like, who cares if it's crooked? As long as they kept the envelope and they kept their book and their items. So feeling forward for me was learning how to release the reins and realizing that it took one moment where I was trying to micromanage and I dropped the ball on something that I was like, man, if I had just let this person do their job, it could have probably gotten done. And then learning to release the reins and be like, you know what, screw it. I hired this person for a reason. They're getting a good check for a reason. Let them do their job.
Thank you. We're talking a lot about balance, and with the conversation about balance also comes burnout. It is a very, very real concept, especially this is America. This is a hyper-capitalist society. We are constantly being given messaging that tells us that we need to do this. We have to have 4 companies. We have to have this. We have to have this. And burnout is a very real thing. So healthy mental health practices matter, especially for people, not just women, for people that are functioning at an extraordinarily high level. I am such an advocate for mental health and mental health awareness and that sort of taking care of yourself, because if you don't have anything, you don't have this. So I'd like to ask, all 3 of you, what do you do to basically protect yourself? Protect your mental health through everything that you have to experience, especially you come from corporate finance. I mean, has anybody seen The Wolf of Wall Street? Yeah, she did that for 20 years, so, and VC is no different. So I'm just wondering how you guys add that to the balance.
Well, one of the things that I've learned being on the venture and the founder side is delegation is key. If you can delegate, you can make your life so much easier. Delegation is also something that's going to help you to prevent the burnout, because one thing as founders, what we're very good at doing is wearing all the hats. And very proudly, very stressed, but we very proudly wear all the hats. And at the end of the day, you're the only one that's burnt out. And I think if you can, and that's where team comes in. You get a team that you can trust, people that you can say, hey, I need you to take care of this and that, because when it's your company, you think, oh, this is my baby, I can't trust anybody with it. But no, you are going to burn the F out if you don't sit the baby to the center, metaphorically. But, so yeah, that was one of the things that I learned to do. It was like, there's something that you can do that will take you 2 days, somebody else can do it in 2 hours. Let them do it. That's what you're there for. Whether you're redecorating your house, and you need help doing that, or you're starting a company, or you're fundraising, whatever it is, you have to learn to delegate, because that's going to save your life and take so much off.
I am good for telling people that is not my ministry. That is not my ministry. That I do extraordinarily well, but that is not my ministry. I'm going to hire someone to do this. So that's very good advice. Jalissa.
Yeah, so I remember I was sitting in my car one day and I was just going through my emails. I was trying to be the customer service support agent. I was being a manager in the warehouse. I was doing all the things that I should have been doing because I thought that I could do it all. And that's a lie that we tell ourselves because we think that, okay, well, I can't do it and no one can do it like me. But the biggest lesson I learned in that is you have to delegate it to people that, one, know what they're doing and are not going to play with their time. And additionally, you have to empower people once you give them that role. So you can't give them something and then close your fist to it. You have to give it to them and let them be. You have to watch them. So that's not about micromanaging. It's about seeing how they move, seeing how they speak, seeing how they operate in rooms that you may not be in. Because what is going to really burn you out is thinking that you can do it all, and it's impossible. We can't do it all. Most of us are mothers, wives, we are so important, sisters, daughters. So when I realized I couldn't wear all the hats, I started to give them hats to somebody else. Let somebody else do it. And I thought it was really valuable because I couldn't find myself to cry another time, to be feeling like I'm alone, like I'm doing this all by myself, because you start to feel like that, especially as a first generation entrepreneur. You don't have many mentors. I never had one. So I was doing it all by myself and learning the hard way. And so I just decided I don't want to learn the hard way anymore. I want people to help me. And once I reached out, I realized that people really wanted to help. And once you realize that, once you just ask those questions, the hardest thing people can say is, I can't do it. And then you pivot, you find someone else who can, and I'm sure you will.
So my angle is completely different. I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead.
My angle is completely different from those because I do agree with both. But on a more mental health side, I think we need to make sure we are not measuring against other people, their pace, and that's the most important to me. So on the mental health side, I don't put myself on anyone else's measurements or timeline. And so for my mental health, I had to learn to make sure I wasn't saying, no, first of all, I've never kept up with the Joneses. This person got a Bentley or Rolls Royce, no, it's for you. If I don't want that, that's okay. I don't need to have it right now. Maybe I don't ever want that, and that's okay too. I've actually seen friends who are successful who bought things like, I won't say a particular brand, but they might buy a designer brand that they don't even like because, well, with this financial wealth, it's what they also have. And I'm like, if you don't like it, then don't buy it. I don't care if it's $50,000 for that bag. If I don't think it's cute, I'm not buying it, right? But mental health-wise, being in a position where you're not putting yourself in somebody else's race and just forcing yourself to have to be the quickest person in the race either. Take your time, set your own pace and your own metrics. And when you set those metrics, then you need to congratulate yourself because you can't wait for the world to tell you you're doing good or let you know that, hey, I see your progress. You have to see your own progress first, and that's my personal opinion. So no one sees the hard work that you're doing in the background. They might not see that if you're a mother or a father, that you have a little one whose game you have to go to, you have the dentist bill you have to pay, you had to work 10 hours and get home and babysit the child and then put them to sleep and then work 3 more hours in your company before you go to sleep. They don't see the days where you might be working 19 hours. So you need to make sure when you're doing those things that you sit down and be like, you know what, this week, give yourself grace. Like, I put in a lot of hours. I accomplished one more thing on the list of things towards my goals. Because I think when you can mentally make sure that you're also giving yourself a pat on your shoulders, that goes very far. Because if you don't keep track of it, before you know it, you think you did nothing, you accomplished anything, you accomplished nothing. But one of the best things you do is write it down and check it off the list because you're like, ooh, I did a lot of things this month or this year. So maybe you started with 10 things and you did 12, but sometimes we don't realize we did 12 things because we're not keeping track of it or we're keeping up with somebody else's pace. So I'll be very mindful of that.
I want to leave the audience with a few takeaways. One of my takeaways that I want to leave the audience with is be very careful about monetizing your passion, because the whole conversation with burnout, there was a point in my life in which I realized I had absolutely no hobbies, because every time I had a hobby, I tried to make money out of it, and then it stopped providing a sense of joy to me. And that is part of the balance. You gotta understand you are a human being at the end of the day. We all want to make money, we all want to have successful lives, we want it all. But you have to understand your fallibility, and you've got and understand that it doesn't make you weak to acknowledge your vulnerability, because as far as I'm concerned, vulnerability is a superpower. It has been in my life, and everybody that I know, they're the most vulnerable people and the strongest people that I know. So what I want you all to leave the audience with is, imagine your younger selves that want to become who you are today. They are sitting in this audience. I want you to leave them with a sentence, not a strategy, but a belief, a part of a mindset that they can take with them and fix to memory and apply. I want you to leave them with that, and also, if you feel like you want to do that, maybe suggest a book that you absolutely loved, that you have notes in the margins, you read it every once in a while because it impresses upon you, and sometimes you're a different version of yourself and you're absorbing it in a different way because you've had different life experiences. Let's start with you, Dr. J, and then we'll go around.
So the first thing I want to say is that either biblical or not, either like the Bible, Christian, whatever, I always believe that the strongest leaders are created from a broken space, and I'm a big firm believer in that. So if you're going through a trial at your place or whatever you're going through, just know that some of the strongest leaders that we know of our day are right now, from the Steve Jobs of the world to Amen, to like the Keanu Reeves of the world that we look at and we go, oh wow, this person, they have some of the hardest stories and went through a lot. So the strongest leaders are created from broken space. And one of my favorite books is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza. It's very left and right brain. Thank you. And for any of those who don't know the book, it's not just a mindset book, but it's something that just kind of reminds us sometimes we have these ways that we kind of get stuck in our path. It helps you with different exercises and meditations that you can do to help with that.
My takeaway would be just don't be afraid to pivot, whatever that looks like. Whether you're in your career, in your personal life, just don't ever be afraid to pivot. Because you won't be the first person and you won't be the last. And then a book that I would recommend, I'm rereading it now for like the 4th time. It's called The Mountain Is You. No, it's kind of like yours, but it talks about a lot of self-sabotage on things that we do and how to rewire our brain to regulate our nervous system and how to get out of survival mode. I'm from Parent City, so I grew up in survival mode. I grew up in survival mode, and it's like you get into the world and you get into DC and you start working with these people and you're like, nobody here is in survival mode, so how do I get myself out of here so I can at least mentally elevate as well, right? And it's just a wonderful, wonderful book.
I would leave you all with Start Believing in Yourself for the First Time. And the book that I would recommend is The 4 Agreements. Have y'all read The 4 Agreements? Anybody in here? It changed my life. I read it for the 2nd time a month ago. One thing that I could take away from the book is the voice that is in your head matters. So how you speak to yourself is important. The ideas that you're allowed to flow through your mind and to actually believe matter. And also keeping your word matters. So when you say something, stand on it. Whether you're making a promise to yourself, whether you're making a promise to a friend, a family member, stand on your word, because the more you start to act on and live in your truth, the more abundance will come your way, and you don't have to live your life with your fist closed. Like, the growth will just happen, but you have to be honest with yourself. And that inner voice is the first place that you start.
Jalissa Seymour, Olivia Griffin, and Dr. Giselle, thank you so much for joining me on the stage. Thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon. Continue to learn about building wealth and also keeping your mindsets, prepared for the greatness that is on the precipice of your life. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.